uh, exciting discussion ahead of us. We've got Dan McMaster from Solventum and Stefan Madensing from Mayo Clinic. And we're expecting Nick Brazis from Pentair to join us too. And the topic of today is the connectivity between corporate venture capital and strategics and entrepreneurs, which is area rich with opportunity, but also some pitfalls. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and get going, and maybe Dan, you could give a brief introduction about you, your company, and a little bit about your role.
I'm happy to do it. Nice to see you all. If you don't recognize this green screen and the brand behind it, that's okay, because I am from originally 3M Healthcare. 3M Healthcare has spun out into its own publicly traded company called Solventum, and the company itself is now about a $9 billion entity uh, under the name of Solventum. We went public on April 1st. So that's the brand you're seeing. You've been used to seeing the red 3M. I lead our corporate venture capital group within Solventum. Before that, it was our 3M Healthcare Ventures. And I've spent 20 years at 3M, actually. So trained as a chemical engineer and MBA, and then spent 20 years at 3M. So I am spent the last 7 leading strategy corporate development for our healthcare IT business based in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's about a $1.3 billion business of 3M Healthcare. And prior to that, about 10 years in oral care, 3M's oral care business, both as an entrepreneur, where I started a few businesses inside of 3M and had a blast doing that, as well as a general manager. So, and started my career in strategy and M&A business development inside of 3M. Happy to talk more, but great to meet you all.
Great, thank you, Dan. Stefan, maybe you could do the same.
Happy to. Great to see everyone this morning. Stefan Madensing. I live within Mayo Clinic's Department of Business Development. Our department has 2 sister arms, our corporate development arm and our Mayo Clinic Ventures arm. Primarily, in my day job, is supporting our Mayo Clinic Ventures team, which cross-functionally serves as the tech transfer office. So we facilitate and work with our clinical innovators and researchers throughout the institution to evaluate, capture, and work towards licensing of intellectual property across the 3 Mayo Clinic campuses that we have here in the US. As well, we operate as a venture firm and provide some early stage funding to help move technology that's being developed at Mayo along through developmental milestones towards a commercial endpoint. Our goal really is ultimately to get new innovations out to healthcare and move the needle in healthcare. But we also work collaboratively with startups and strategic companies throughout the world to help advance their technologies and help them get to clinic, get to patients as quickly as possible. We have a number of ways that we do that, be it deploying capital or jointly working to develop technology with great entrepreneurs and innovators. And part of my role is to help support specific departments within medical device domains, healthcare and digital health, and orthopedics. We have a large team of about 80 people on the ventures side and about another 60 people on our corporate development side. And really excited to learn a little bit more about everything you all are doing and see if there are opportunities to collaborate.
Awesome. Hey, thank you both. Why don't we use that as a little bit of a jumping off point? Stefan, you talked about kind of what your charter is. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, as you're looking at different startups, either that come through Mayo or are externally identified. What criteria do you look at? What are you looking for when you're thinking about a new company?
Great question. It's a hard question, and I'm going to try to give non-generic answers wherever I can. So bear with me. We have 2 arms, like I said, our corporate team and our ventures team. They kind of have different lenses. They have different scopes and focuses within the organization. I'll answer the question twice. So our corporate development team are really focused on large scale relationships and collaborations with other commercial entities. Their focal area are trying to advance 4 strategic domains within Mayo Clinic. If you're familiar with Mayo Clinic platform, that's our incentive or our opportunity to work towards democratizing and making patient data available to help advance digital healthcare solutions. These are one of our strategic areas where our corporate development team are routinely looking for construction partners or different organizations or entities that can help accelerate and enhance that vertical. We have an international team that are focused on scale up and growth of Mayo Clinic's international presence. Those are two of our focal areas from a corporate development perspective. Mayo Clinic Laboratories is the third. This is an external entity to Mayo Clinic focused on democratizing diagnostic solutions and making them available, of course, at our hospitals, but operating as one of the largest esoteric testing facilities in the United States. And then we have a bit of a catch-all, bin number 4, which is our high-value opportunities. And these are opportunities where working with a strategic partner or a strategic collaborator can serve as a diversified source of revenue for Mayo Clinic to help keep the lights on, and keep advancing and delivering the great care that we do across the US. So where these HVOs or high-value opportunities lay are opportunities where we think we can bring significant value to a company and through the life of that relationship, generate significant value for them, their shareholders, and Mayo Clinic as well. So that's our corporate development team's focal areas. When we're working with Mayo Clinic Ventures, we're typically looking at early stage innovation where we can leverage either intellectual property that's being developed at Mayo Clinic or take advantage of the rich clinical expertise throughout our 3 campuses that we can jointly and collaboratively work with a startup to help them advance their product. We treat these like traditional tech transfer office relationships with a little bit of a nuanced spin, kind of like consulting on steroids. But we're really looking for places where we can bring value beyond Mayo's brand and beyond Mayo's investment to really help move these technologies and these solutions towards patients as quickly as possible.
Thank you for that. That's great. Dan, how do you think about it at Solventum? What are your criteria? What are you looking for?
Sure. Yeah, I think we'll talk about the ventures itself and how it fits into the corporate development strategy first, and then I'll touch on what we're looking for. So part of it is now, given that we're spinning out new, we're in a bit of startup phase right now where we're building and defining our processes, the ventures team itself, and everything right as we're going. So that's a fun part of it. It feels like a startup of a venture fund, and defining even our corporate development organization and all of that. So and by the way, Rob, I will warn you, I think I shared I have to leave about 10 minutes to the hour today for one of that. We're having our investment board we've just established and having that meeting and just setting that up. So I need to be
I appreciate you wedging us in while you can.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to advance warning. It won't be because I'm getting bored or anything. So, but yes, Solventum Ventures sits in between our corporate R&D. So research and development is very important inorganically, historically at 3M and now at Solventum, and then corporate development, which is our M&A function, and that will be a big, very important function for Solventum. So we view ourselves as another tool complementing R&D and corporate development. And we collaborate very closely with the head of R&D, our CTO, as well as the head of M&A. And so that's how we fit. And right now we're in somewhat of a unique position, whereas we've spun out in an IPO, we've taken on some debt. And so we're not able to do a lot of large M&A right now in the first 18 months to 24 months at Solventum. So one of the roles we'll also play is scanning the landscape, not only for early technologies and early innovations, but also looking for companies that could be in the pipeline for future acquisition with M&A. So I would view ourselves more in the Series A through C rather than seed round. And we're looking specifically for companies that are moving quickly and innovating in the strategic growth areas that Solventum has defined. And ideally ones that are doing it more disruptively, faster, taking more risk than Solventum particularly would do. And so right now we're looking at the companies in the areas of med tech or med surge. We're looking in oral health, and we're also looking in digital health and healthcare IT. So those would be the functional areas. As I mentioned, series primarily A through C, fundraising. And then, like most venture companies, we're looking for a unique, differentiated value proposition and strong management teams. Those are things that we spend a lot of time focusing on. Happy to drill deeper into that, Rob, based on
Yeah.
what other questions you have.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think that gives good scope for both organizations, how you think about it from a strategic perspective and vertical and where in the funding cycle and risk cycle. I know both of you have evaluated and had meetings with a ton of founders, and a common thread that I get from founders is, okay, the capital journey is kind of one path, and then there's the strategic journey of how to intersect with a strategic, like, so. And like, if we could kind of get inside your brain, and maybe you can be a little more hypothetical here, but you think about a founder, Dan, coming to you, what can be differentiating from a team or a founder perspective? What can go well? What are characteristics that resonate with you when you're meeting that entrepreneur?
That's a great question. Everyone's different, but fundamentally, the very first thing I look at is belief in and passion for the cause that they're championing. And as you know, it's entrepreneurship and starting a company is not for the faint of heart. And so that to me is table stakes of your conviction and your dedication and your belief, because you're going to need to have that yourself to get through the tough times and drive through what will be lots of opposition. That's super important. But B, you're going to be the one that is telling that story, and to outside investors, to customers, to partners. And so your ability, and it's hard to fake that. And so that's why I say I need to look someone in the eyes and really feel that conviction and belief, and know that when you tell that story to others, that they're also going to believe that in their level. So that's the first thing. And then the second one is really just your ability to assemble a great management team, and also really move an organization to your cause. So that secondly, can you really rally and drive an organization? So those are probably the two. And then there's 100 other things, but start with that.
That's great. Stefan, how would you think about that?
I think Dan stole two of the top 2 of 3 that I would have gone with, so I'll try to come up with a couple other ones. But I'm a recovering founder myself, so to speak, trying really hard not to make that mistake again wherever I can. But if I were going to give a cheeky answer, I would say 2 things that often really stand out for me when we talk to founders, or people who are able to balance hustle and humility. And because selling to hospitals and working within the hospital space is such a challenge, that you need to know that they have the conviction, like Dan said, that they're there for the right reasons, that they really believe in their solution, because if they don't, nobody else will. But to know that when you're dealing with these large entities that move on a different cadence than you can and have to as a startup, that you can't put all eggs in one basket. If I get the sense that a company is only talking to us as Mayo Clinic because we are Mayo Clinic, and they're not looking at other avenues for success, that fills me with some concern, because we're a fairly large ship. We don't move quickly in any different direction, but we can go pretty far. And so I need to know that founders understand that when they're talking to a group like us, and when they're trying to work inside the healthcare space. So that's my cheeky answer, is some hustle, but also balanced humility. The team is probably the most important piece from our perspective when we're evaluating companies, because at the time that we're evaluating companies, more often than not, we found a technological alignment with an unmet need in healthcare that, again, we can leverage our expertise, they can leverage theirs, and we can really bring together a team that's united, but knowing that they're surrounded by advisors and people who are going to fill in the gaps that every founder has is paramount to their ability to even approach success. You know, it's a long road. And if you don't have the right people around you, it's going to be pretty hard.
Rob,
Great.
can I add one more piggyback on that? Because I touched on it, but Stefan reminded me of what I would view as pretty important. You know, when I talked about being believable, a big part of the third part here, when you mentioned humility, I would just say honesty and trust. So that's one thing that I've learned. I think sometimes early founders make the mistake that they need to oversell, right? They're so passionate about it that then you almost exaggerate and oversell. And that is probably the quickest turnoff for me when I know someone is exaggerating or not being realistic, because ultimately being able to say what being able to do what you say is so important. And I'm watching that pretty early on in the process. And the reason for that is I'm going to be likely be on the board of this company. And there's nothing that's maybe more frustrating than hearing someone say, we're going to do X in the quarter or X in the year, or we're going to hit these milestones. And then you come back and you don't do it. And so I'm looking at early things in those conversations. If they said something, did they follow through, and do they over deliver what they say? And that criteria is very important, and it goes with the humility that Stefan mentioned. And because we'll ask questions early. If they give a brutally blunt and honest answer, that is a win for me. It's okay to say you're not $20 million, or you don't have all these things just yet. You just need to be honest, in my view. So
That's great. Great insight across the board there, gentlemen. I love the belief team piece, the honesty, trust stuff, and hustle, humility. I'm probably going to steal that one, Stefan. Dan, you kind of open the door into pitfalls a little bit, and that was another thing I wanted to delve into. I think every one of us has pitched something somewhere before, and we've all had pitches that we've thought, yeah, I nailed that one. That went great. And we've also had ones that didn't go well. Like, if we're being honest, all of us have had ones that haven't gone well. Maybe if each of you could kind of share a little bit of what are pitfalls you've seen from entrepreneurs. You highlighted a big one, like if they overpromise and underdeliver, or violate the trust piece. But what else would you think? And maybe we'll start with Stefan on this one.
It's a good question. There's so many. I'll talk about one that's just pressing from recent conversations. It is really frustrating to listen to, talk with, learn from a founder, hear a pitch from a founder who doesn't have a good appreciation of the regulatory approach, especially in healthcare. And it's sometimes a part of the conversation that gets kind of left to the end. We're going to figure out the technology first and then figure out everything else later. And it's very challenging to establish that credibility that you need to, like Dan said, to trust that founder, to ensure that they have the vision and see the full path, the road ahead, when key pieces like making sure that we understand exactly how we're going to demonstrate that this is safe and effective for patients is taken for granted. So that's one it's come up a couple times in the last couple of weeks, so it's fresh on my mind. But if I can think of some other ones, I'll let you know. What do you think, Dan?
Dan, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I'll piggyback on the healthcare part. I think again, because we're also in healthcare, but the underestimation of what it takes in healthcare can be hard for us. And I think we see that. I mentioned that because we do see that pretty often. And and saying, look, we have this technology and it's just going to scale in healthcare. Healthcare is really difficult to scale. But I do think, going back to what the one I already mentioned, Rob, is a big one of being able to answer the questions honestly as they're asked, and be able to accurately assess the situation. That's really important. And Stefan touched on the humility, but I think too much boasting and overselling of the individual can be a turn off for me. I think the actions and the technology and the company can speak for itself, and you're seeing the individual themselves perform. So I think you don't need to explicitly necessarily brag about yourself. That's something maybe more personal for me.
That's great. Thank you both. I got a few more things I'd like to ask. At the same time, if there are any other questions that anybody from the from the audience have, drop them in the chat. Happy to check those out as well. Dan, beyond and I think both of you touched on it a little bit. Through the CVC lens, usually, we're thinking about, strategic fit and doing an equity, investment. What are, apart from that kind of classic type of relationship, what are other ways that you could think of that a startup might collaborate with your organization?
Say that again, Rob. What?
Yeah, outside of hey, I've got a startup, I'm looking to do an A round, I'd like to do an investment. Are there other ways that your organization collaborates, maybe outside of the CVC group, with startups?
I can start on that. I think certainly, and actually for us, that's actually a good way into the company is, when even as we look at criteria for M&A or for venture investing, we're looking for a synergy with some portion of our organization. And that actually often becomes a hopper or feeder for more formal equity investments or M&A down the road. So identification of a way that your technology or your capabilities complement something in our organization. We have different collaborations that could be taken in the form of a research and development collaboration, where you might have a technology that complements technologies we have at Solventum, and maybe there's a way you can add one feature or one product into a portfolio that makes that more complete. There's also business type relationships or business collaboration. So ultimately, for you, it'd be understanding the best you can the different businesses or product families at Solventum, and knowing how your piece really is a complement. And if that's the case, then finding the right person in the organization to make that pitch to, and working through, we do lots of trials, pilots, early partnership collaborations, and those grow into often some of the ventures.
Yeah, so one of the first, just to make sure I'm catching it right, one of the first big points, Dan, you'd recommend is make sure that startup has a good understanding of what your company does and what the strategy might be, right? Exactly.
That's exactly right. And by the way, as we talk about turnoffs, that's a quick one right, to get discounted if you don't understand the organization you're going into. And maybe I assume that we get selfish with the 3M brand and Mayo brands, that people know us and understand us. But if people haven't done the homework and they're saying, I know you make Post-it notes, when you're in a healthcare conversation talking about details, that's very apparent if you haven't done your homework. So thanks, Rob.
No, that's great. Stefan, how about you?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, it's Friday morning. I feel a little cheeky. If you expect us to do your homework on where are areas of interest to Mayo Clinic, where do we have expertise or clinical leaders, scientific leaders, researchers in this domain, it is very hard for me to prioritize that conversation over others. That goes back to, again, that hustle, humility, trying to find that balance. Help us help you when it comes to making those connections or finding those opportunities to work together. A little differentiated from a traditional corporate venture arm, our Mayo Clinic Ventures arm is really focused on collaborative development, so co-development of new solutions. when I'm talking about co-development of new solutions with an early stage startup, it's very evident when they're, unfamiliar of the faculty or the individuals who are pushing the boundaries in that space here at Mayo. It's much more fruitful of a conversation when we're able to say, hey, I've read some manuscripts or seen some of the work from X, Y, and Z faculty at Mayo. Would love to have a conversation with them about their work, about our product, and where we might be able to take this together collaboratively. That really helps us to help you make those connections, find really good work to do together. And one of the unique things I think that we're able to bring to the table, both through our success in generating revenue as a tech transfer office, but also our ability to deploy capital to move promising projects forward, is if there is work that you could stand to do that you would benefit to do at Mayo using our resources, whether they be preclinical or even clinical, these are things that we can work with you under the right agreement to help jointly fund as well. We treat those as investments because we see that as an investment in the development of the technology and the collaboration between two groups. It doesn't mean we're going to buy the product. We stay pretty far outside of that lane. That decision is between care providers and their patients, but we can absolutely help to move a product forward. And those are some of the most fruitful collaborations that we're able to execute here on our Mayo Clinic Ventures side. The same, I think, goes for our corporate team, where they're looking at large unmet needs in the practice. And if there are solutions in your portfolio or solutions that are on your roadmap that can meet some of those unmet needs in healthcare, as identified by our practice leadership, then I think we have a really good, face in the same direction, synergistic opportunity.
That's great. On that, don't expect me to have done your homework for you point that I think both of you made. My guess is about probably a third of the folks on the call or watching later have kind of a healthcare background or some related connectivity. What I can say for the rest is that from having spoken to CBC leaders in every industry, and I've probably talked to 30, 40, 50, those comments are ubiquitous. They apply everywhere, right? So understanding who you're talking to and what the priorities are and what your criteria are ahead of time, that's great feedback for anybody contemplating working with the corporate. One of the challenges I think entrepreneurs and strategics run into, gentlemen, is that dancing with elephants issue, right? So Solventum, your new company, but you're $9 billion. Mayo Clinic is the #1 hospital system in the world with all this research capability and everything else. And then you're maybe as an entrepreneur, you've got a small team, 3-4 people, right? What guidance would you give an entrepreneur? Stefan, I'd ask you this first. What guidance would you give an entrepreneur in trying to work with your organization in terms of pace, in terms of risk, in terms of how to think about working with your organization?
Another great question. A few things come to mind right off the bat, and the first is patience and long-term vision, right? One of the things that I think is ubiquitously challenging for a startup, which is kind of the opposite of the problem we have, is Mayo's taking long views. We're looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years out in the future. Startups don't have that luxury. So it's important to understand that, our office will do about 150 deals a year. That conversation that we're having with you is potentially one of 150. It probably takes 4 times that number of active conversations, active negotiations to get to the number that we actually execute per year. And that you're fitting into that, which, not to say it's too big, not to say it's too small, but that's where our pressure points lay. We're not likely going to move at the speed that you need to move. So you have to understand that that's going to be a risk for your team. And I think our side tries to be very transparent about that, but it is a nature of the beast that we're just operating on different timescales. When it comes to reaching out and getting into contact, the two ways that I think are most fruitful is first and foremost to be involved in the community. Mayo Clinic is a fairly large entity, but we do maintain very strong roots in the community in each of the 3 sites that we're based. So here in Rochester, I have the privilege to sit on the board for the Collider Foundation that helps early stage entrepreneurs in the local area. Being a part of the community helps to develop those inroads. Of course, it is still a person first business. In Florida and in Arizona, of course, we have similar connectivity with the community. And then the second, is making sure that you're willing to reach out and have these early stage conversations about alignment, about fit, and that you've done the homework. Again, those are the pieces that really help move and prioritize a new relationship or a conversation above those where the activation energy on our side is just higher and higher. The higher the activation energy is, the harder it is to prioritize over other conversations.
That's great. Thank you. And Dan, what guidance would you give?
I think patience was the first thing that came on my mind as well. First word, because and actually, you didn't ask this question, Rob, but if you talk about pitfalls, on the CVC side or on the collaboration side overall, that's one of our challenges is we pick startups because of your speed and agility and the pace and the passion and risk taking. At the same time, that makes it tricky, like you said, the dance with the elephant, because our flywheel is operating at a different scale. And so I think recognition of that dynamic early is important. And so to the extent you can, back to doing homework, but also be specific about the areas of need from the larger corporation or the corporate CVC, so that you can be focused and specific. And then, I say this often early in the conversations, we want to be careful not to slow you down. And so that's something to monitor, because if you're not careful, yes, people kind of think, oh, it's a home run. I landed Mayo or I landed 3M, but you want to be careful about that, because you don't want the large company and our slow timelines to drain your precious resources, to drain your focus. So you should also at the same time, make sure you're getting what you need from the company. You're being specific about that. And if not, then, you need to think about, are there better, faster partners based on my current state? So that's a caution to think about.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both. So I want to go to the chat. We've got a couple of questions here for you, and recognizing that we'll probably be wrapping a few minutes earlier than we normally would. One question from Amag. Tech startups with federal SBIR awards, maybe NSF or NIH vetted technologies. How is that viewed in your area? Is that viewed as there's a positive thing, or just how do you think about them when that type of a founder or startup comes through that's already got some technology or some maybe federal awards? Stefan, maybe you could start.
Yeah, happy to. I think it's a great question. Definitely that kind of de-risking is valuable. I would say it is valuable, but it's not one of the top criterion I'd be looking for. We're still interested mostly on, are we solving huge problems? There are plenty of NIH and NSF grants that are awarded to, moving the needle, but not necessarily in large problems in healthcare. So again, we're always going to come back to basics on, is this a large problem? Can we move the needle? Can Mayo, as one of the top hospitals, if not the top hospital in the world, work with this company to maintain that position? We're looking at how do we bring in, how do we take part in the newest and best and upcoming technology and solutions in healthcare. So that's really what's driving all of our decisions. Is this somewhere we can meaningfully provide value? Is this somewhere that we can help to maintain our position in the lead? That's our focal point. So where validation of the technological component of the solution is helpful, it doesn't necessarily vet that the problem is real. It doesn't necessarily vet that this is what's in alignment with our goals and interests as an organization. So helpful, always good to have money, no doubt about that. And non-dilutive is extremely appealing when we're looking at potentially collaborating or making an investment. But it's not gonna, I would say, immediately jumping to the top of the pack in terms of conversation.
Dan, would you have anything to add there?
Agree, beneficial but not sufficient, and I would await a customer, acceptance or customer excitement higher. Again, thinking about, let's say one large customer that might give you, $2 to $5 million a year. I'm more interested in knowing you've struck a nerve in a value proposition. But this is helpful to have. But it's not sufficient.
Yeah. Susan Langer asks, do you have a formal structure to engage pilots? Do you publicize what problems you're trying to solve? How do you think about that? Maybe Dan, you can kick off.
So I apologize. I was just reading the response to the question, so I didn't hear that. So can you say that?
Do you have a formal structure do you have a formal structure to engage pilots? Do you publicize what problems you're trying to solve?
We don't have a formal structure for that. I see. Yes, the one above there. We don't have a formal structure, unfortunately. So at this point, I think it would be the place where publicizing problems we're trying to solve would be the website. So for us, we've structured that into our 4 business groups, and then within the 4 business groups, you can look into the divisions and product lines. So that's a really good place, and that tends to define the businesses by the problems we're trying to solve. So you might find, for example, advanced wound healing as a problem that we're trying to solve, and you could drill into that.
Yeah, perfect. And Stefan?
So the question of formal structure to engaging pilots, I think I'll give a generic answer, and then I'll give a little bit more specific one. Like most hospitals, a pilot will be driven by a champion, a clinical champion. So Mayo Clinic is a physician-led organization. If there is interest from the clinical faculty perspective to try, test, bring in a new technology, again, our business development team does not sit in between that conversation. So when it comes to pilots, there are formal programs, things like 90-day pilots, things like equipment loans, of course, sponsored research programs are the preference if you have funds to deploy a study or an experimental evaluation. These are some of the most effective ways to work with our clinician investigators and clinical leaders in the hospital. And to the second question of publicizing the problems we're trying to solve, not specifically, there's no retained database of unmet needs at Mayo Clinic. If there was, I wish I could find it. But again, it's kind of one of those areas where we challenge our entrepreneurs and our innovators, both internal and external, to know the unmet needs in a domain, to really understand and do the homework in those domains. And of course, our clinical investigators are routinely exploring and publishing on these domains of cutting edge science. So if you're impacting in one of these areas, whether it be diagnostics, med tech, biopharmaceuticals, I can almost guarantee that there's somebody paying attention to that area across one of our Mayo Clinic sites. So that was a non-answer, and I recognize that. I'm sorry, but we do not have a centralized repository for that. Do wish we did.
That's great. There was one other, I think the first question in the chat was from Lisa, and I think the essence of it was kind of she added a clarification, but it was really around, do you have any guidance around how to help navigate that regulatory environment for a startup?
Stefan, you might have some guidance. I mean, I would just say you want to have a basic understanding of the regulatory process. If you're in the U.S., the U.S. regulatory, so the 510K, class 2 or class 3, just understanding those basic buckets and that process, and then there are various processes as well for Europe with CE marks and other countries. But I don't. I'm sure there are websites that go through all of that, but I don't know them because I've learned it a different way. Stefan, do you have any tips and tricks for how to learn that
The
quickly?
two that come to mind right off the bat, you mentioned, of course, self-educating and knowing enough at least to be dangerous. And then I'm often surprised when early stage founders don't take advantage of, especially in medtech, specifically in medtech, don't take advantage of the FDA's resources in this domain. Informational sessions are free. They're relatively easy to organize, and you can have an open conversation with no impediments down the road about what your technology is, where it exists in the landscape of medtech and medical devices or digital health, and better understand at least what are some of the challenges you're going to need to understand and overcome down the road. Of course, there's the regulatory consultant angle, which costs money and I think is really better suited once you have a good idea of what it is you need. But there are free resources and the FDA makes them pretty readily available. I'm often thrown off when med device developer hasn't even asked the question.
I was also going to toss out there, and maybe Stefan, you could react to it. Medical Alley might be a useful resource to help connect you to different resources through the pipeline.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hey, I think we're coming up against a stop on time. I do want to thank everybody for dialing in. Great to have the dialogue. Love getting questions in the chat for the panelists. Stefan, Dan, can't thank you enough for being a part of this. Really helpful in providing your guidance, your expertise to the ecosystem. Really good stuff. Thank you so much for joining. Again, thank you so much. Any final comments?
Yeah, I appreciate you having us on, and I just have to applaud for those of you. It sounds like many of you are entrepreneurs. Just applaud your work. It's not easy work, but it is so needed and it's inspiring. It's part of the reason I'm in the job I am, because I love to spend time with entrepreneurs like you and hear the passion that you have for what you're doing. So keep up the fantastic work.
Wholeheartedly agree. Always appreciate being included and getting an opportunity to promote our office and the work that we're doing with early stage entrepreneurs like yourself. I threw my email here in the chat. If you want to reach out, feel free to, and happy to schedule some time with myself or some of my team to talk through, whether there's a good fit now or in the future.
Great. Hey, again, thank you, everybody. Have a great end of your week, and we'll see you next Friday forum. Thank you, everybody.